name is Martin, and together with Logan, we're the co-presidents of the ITE-NYU student chapter. Today's event is our third annual Women in Transportation Forum, and we're glad to have our three guests here today. First, I'd like to thank Siva for arranging and being our liaison with them, and for Susanna for running today's panel. Special thanks for all of you to attend. And Susanna, I think you're going to take it on from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Uh, if you can, please turn on your camera so it feels more like a conversation, a real event, a real person event. So, like Martin said, I'm Susana Duran Bernardes, and I'll be moderating this event today. I'm a PhD student in transportation planning and engineering here at NYU, and I'm the vice president / treasurer of NYU's ITE-ITS student chapter. So we will start with some icebreaker questions, then we go to the meat of the event, which will be questions related to women in transportation. And finally, we will open to some Q&A. You can type your questions in the chat, or you can wait for the Q&A to unmute yourself and ask your question. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers today. So we have here amazing women. So we have Erica Tinio. Erica Tinio has 2 master's degree, which is awesome. So one is in urban development and design from the University of New South Wales, and the other in urban management and planning from the University of Western Sydney. She currently works as a transportation planning and designer at Sam Schwartz. And we also have Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein has a master in regional planning in urban planning from Cornell University and is currently the director of transportation planning at Westchester County. And we have also Najmeh Jami, who has a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Memphis and is currently a transportation engineering at Stantec. So welcome. I hope we all have a great conversation here today. So let me start with some icebreak questions. So first thing I want to ask, it's what do you like and dislike most about remote work? Feel free. Let's just start with Najmeh. She unmuted herself.
Well, I know one thing I like. I like the flexibility of the hours, so I can do my exercise better. So before that, sometimes I had to go to work super early and I ended up staying super late. And then when I got home, I never had time to do anything. I was so tired by the time I got home. But now that the commute is gone, so I make sure that I can always find some times, or if I'm super busy, like during the morning, I can do it in the afternoon. So the flexibility is really great. One thing I don't like is I started missing all those in-person interaction with everybody. So even though this is great, the technology is working, but there's a huge value in seeing people and having in-person interactions.
Yeah, can definitely relate to that. So, Naomi?
I would probably echo most of the same things that Najmeh just said. I think there's a way I found I can do more in a day, more meetings. I was just on a meeting, a virtual meeting today, and we were all saying how we've been going from one meeting to the next on Zoom, whereas if we had a meeting out of the office, that would kind of kill the whole morning. So in a way, there is a little bit more productivity, but I do miss seeing people. I miss kind of the proximity to people and kind of serendipitous conversations and that you just don't have.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I work more now that is remote than I used to before. Like, I don't know. And Erica?
I would echo the same sentiments as everyone else regarding just, there's just so much time that you save not commuting. I also appreciate not being interrupted anymore because I work by myself. I mean, I live by myself, and so it's just a lot more efficient and productive. So I value kind of my productivity and time, I think, a lot more. And also I was able to kind of spend some time with my sister and on the West Coast for a chunk of time, because I just really didn't want to be in New York for another few months during a pandemic by myself in my apartment. So just having the freedom to do that, just because my company allowed me to do that, and then also just an opportunity to do that during this time was really valuable for me. I would say, the downsides is definitely not being able to see people. I think, although I feel that we do have more meetings, so in a way that we kind of engage a bit more, and I feel that actual virtual meetings, especially with one of the clients that I work with, I feel that we almost all know each other a bit better because everyone gets called on to contribute something. So in that respect, I feel that you might have more presence in a meeting that might have 20 or 30 people if it was in person. However, yeah, I think being able to have that one-on-one engagement in person is something that I think we all miss.
Well, being I don't know if you're in California now, but being there now with this winter here, I think it's a great pro.
It's in the 70s. It was like 81 yesterday. Not to make anyone else depressed, but yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have a pet? If yes, can you tell us a little bit about it or show us? I don't know. So let's start with Naomi. Naomi, do you have a pet?
I have to say I don't. I did grow up with dogs though, and I have to say our first dog was named Lollipop. So we did have dogs growing up, but I don't have a pet right now.
What about Erica?
I don't actually have a pet. However, I did convince my sister, since she was thinking about adopting another cat, to do that. So she did that actually a couple months ago. So at the moment, I'm just kind of an aunt to a lovely Siamese kitten. So that's been great.
What about you, Najmeh?
I don't either. I did find really good friends. Now these days, that my only activity outside is just walking to Central Park. I made good friends with some turtles at the turtle pond. I go visit them often, but no, I don't have any pets at home.
Yeah, I've noticed that actually people were like, even I adopted a cat, but I noticed that people were adopting more animals during the quarantine, I think, to like kind of, fill that gap that people had. Oh, that's interesting. So we have 3 out of 3 that don't have pets. That's okay. Okay. So last question from our icebreaker. Can you describe us your day so far using 3 words? Let's start with Erica.
Productive, warm, and quiet.
Oh, cool. Najmeh?
Nice and sunny, busy.
Naomi?
Let's see. I would say a little hectic. I would also go along with quiet though, and engaging.
Nice. Yeah. So if you feel free, participants, to type your 3 words in the chat as well, so we can kind of see who has a similar day to each other. So let's start with the first question for our meet of the event. So I would like to know first a little bit about your job and the responsibilities of your work. So why don't start with Naomi?
Okay, I'm the Director of Transportation Planning for the Beeline bus system in Westchester County, just north of New York City. We're the 2nd largest bus system in the state after the MTA. And I oversee a lot of different kinds of planning studies and surveys and apply for grants. And I also act as the liaison with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, known as New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. And in that role, I oversee how the funding comes to the region for the bus system. and how all the requirements for transportation planning are met.
Oh, nice. Lots of responsibilities. Erica?
So actually, technically my title is engineer at Sam Schwartz. I am in the traffic engineering department, and actually all of my work is within Port Authority traffic engineering. So I do JFK and Stewart traffic operations. I complete a lot of like sign requests. I prepare concept plans. I design a lot of the guide signs and signs that you've seen through JFK and LaGuardia and Stewart actually. And then I also work on LaGuardia redevelopment in the traffic department. I communicate all of the roadway changes, all of the closures, any points of interest that have changed during the course of the redevelopment program. So I communicate that to the mapping platforms, so to Waze, Google, Apple, TomTom here. And then I also help with a couple of monthly kind of documents that we distribute to the team in terms of just we do a distribution of all of the monthly activations, and then we also provide base map updates, obviously because there's a lot of changes that's happening at the airport. So,
Oh wow. And Najmeh?
Yeah, I'm also a transportation engineer with Stantec, which is an engineering consultant firm. And we get a variety of projects, and depending on how busy we are and how many staff we have, I can work on so many different projects or sometimes one big project. But since I am with the transportation engineering group, we do a lot of road improvement using modeling, microsimulation modeling, and then we do a lot of safety improvement. We work with New York State DOT, but also sometimes we get, since the Stantec is nationwide or internationally, we get projects from other states too, and we do modeling for them also. Our office is also do a lot of work for the toll agencies. So sometimes we do a lot of traffic and revenue, which is kind of different than traditional traffic engineering work. It's more of data analysis and projection of the traffic and revenue. We do have to do projection for the traffic growth, but that's kind of different. But yeah, it varies, and depending on what stage of the project we are, it could be developing the proposal, it could be coordinating with the clients, or just leading the technical task, or finally preparing the report. So it varies day by day.
Oh, and I will start with Najmeh again. Did you always know that you wanted to work in this position or work with transportation engineering, and in this position you are currently at?
Well, I knew that when I was studying, when I went to grad school in Memphis, and first I was actually in structural engineering, and then after I worked with my advisor at the time, I grew some interest in safety and traffic engineering. So I knew I wanted to be in this field, but what position, I had no idea at the time, like how this whole thing works. So I had to really learn about it. But as I started working, I saw great leaders and great managers, and I started learning from them. And I saw how they could impact their environments and the people around them, and how having a great leader around you could really impact the whole area. So that grew on me, that I wanted to go step by step, move forward.
Interesting. I come from a university that it's also focused on more the structural side of civil engineering. So interesting. I also developed an interest in safety and then went directly to the transportation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. Naomi?
Well, I was always interested in social issues, and I think urban planning was kind of a good fit for me. I grew up though in a more rural area, but I had opportunities to visit cities and to go into New York City growing up. And I just like the excitement and the hustle and bustle of cities. And I got my master's in city planning. And interestingly, I started out, I worked for the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. And then I just kind of got into the transportation field. There were some openings, and I had made contacts with people there through my job. And I just really liked it.
Oh, nice. And Erica?
I have like kind of a really niche kind of specialty because I've been working mostly on airports. So it's very specific to like traffic engineering in airports. So it wasn't really anything I envisioned. But well, as we mentioned before, I have a couple of degrees actually that I did in Sydney. One was in urban design and one was in urban planning. So I've always been interested in kind of more, maybe bigger picture, more like urban redevelopment and like social equity issues, safety, and kind of other multimodal transportation issues. But I mean, you end up kind of bringing those sorts of interests into the work that you do anyway, because even with when I'm looking at intersections and like traffic and signage at JFK, you know, I'm always thinking, oh, I wonder if we can make this more pedestrian friendly, or is there any way that we could, you know, maybe put in biking or something. So, you know, you kind of bring, I think, the things that you're most interested in into the role that you are in, even though you don't necessarily apply it directly. You kind of still have that perspective, which I think is useful in any job. Yeah.
And Eric, how did you develop the skill sets needed to reach your current position?
On the job, like, I mean, it was, yeah, like I didn't do any traffic engineering. I mean, my undergraduate actually was from NYU in studio art. So actually I did fine art. I was a painter, did painting and drawing at NYU. And so, you know, grad school was completely different. I mean, you still feel rather creative because you are thinking of ways of kind of creative solutions to city problems. But yeah, it was kind of way out of my purview. So everything I learned were through my colleagues. Like I didn't do a ton of like AutoCAD or Illustrator, Photoshop necessarily in grad school. I kind of did a hybrid of kind of my fine arts to kind of translate ideas and writing, obviously. Yeah, I basically on the job now I spend almost all of my time doing AutoCAD and Illustrator, some InDesign and Excel. So yeah, you just, you know, day in and day out, and you just YouTube something if you don't know, or ask a colleague if you don't know how to do something. But yeah, on the job.
So yeah, we shouldn't be overwhelmed or afraid of like what's
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Najmeh?
Yeah, as Erika said, just learning by doing it. And early in my career, you know, there's some necessary training you want to take. It could be internally within your company and some of them externally. Whether at the earlier career, I just learned a lot of software by just doing it. I remember I started my first job in Nashville, Tennessee, and at the time, Vissim wasn't really popular in Tennessee. And we got this huge bus rapid transit project for the Nashville that they wanted to, they proposed that, and nobody knew in that area really how to do this micro simulation. I think I started 6 months after my first day, and they said, okay, you're just gonna learn this and we're gonna apply this project. So I was scared, but you know, you just ask, okay, I know this much of it, but then you start talking. I was never afraid to say, okay, I don't know this. And then they always guide you or just point you to someone that can help you. And then again, these days you can Google and YouTube everything else. So a lot of it training and also observing people who are more experienced than me. It's amazing how much you can learn by just being open to learning from other people and how they do their work, and you know how the angle that they're looking at the problems. It's a great tool for me too, and I'm still learning it. It never ends.
Nice. Naomi?
You know, I would have to echo what Erica and Najmeh said. I think your academic background kind of gives you a framework and a basis. And so my undergraduate background is also in liberal arts and history. So that gave me a lot of good kind of writing skills and critical thinking skills. And I find I kind of start with the question, well, how did we get to where we are? And then having a background in city planning gave me certain principles, but so much of it is learning on the job, asking questions, looking at other people, and recognizing what they're good at and trying to emulate that, and just learning by doing.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and having this great examples at work or even at school. It's great. Um, so thinking about the lack of women in leadership positions, I actually think that now we're walking towards having more women in leadership positions, but we still have a long way to go. So thinking about that, what are some strategies that can help women achieve a more prominent role in their organizations that you think of, in your personal opinion? So let's start with Najmeh.
Um, I think I always try to not to prove myself, but I rather to show my quality in my work that I do, and then by that I show how people can look at me based on my qualification rather than my gender. I mean, it's a fact. There are still people that, because engineering is such a predominant profession by males, and you can always see that people in some meeting can treat you different. Unfortunately, I think I've been lucky. I haven't had that many of those events, but I hear that, and I know that people can say something that you find it improper, or when you are at a meeting, they can it's happening. They can actually think that what comes from the male engineers is more valuable. But I just think that I personally decided after the first time that happened to me not to take that personally, and this can be just one person could do that actually does that. And then I just work and bring that creativity and my ideas and my own style to my work, and showing that and getting there by my qualification, and just
Yeah,
bringing that into practice.
nice. Erica?
Um, well, I would kind of echo just, learning to really advocate for yourself and seeking out either executives or managements, project managers that will help advocate for you as well. You also just be specific with goals and like where you want to see yourself in the company. And, just kind of think of things that are measurable. I think a lot of women tend to believe that if we do good work, we'll be recognized for it. And especially my last company, which was like 80% male, that definitely wasn't the case. Like I just figured because I was doing good work, I would be, promoted in a timely manner. But then, someone that was there 6 months was promoted before me, even though we had the same job title and he didn't even have the same amount of experience. So it's just sort of, I think it's really, don't put your career in somebody else's hand. Really think about what you want. Seek out people that will help get you to that point, male or female. And, just, yeah, really, you really just have to advocate and I will also say one thing is like you don't get what you don't ask for. So if you don't ask to do anything more, if you don't ask for more money, you won't get it. So that's another important lesson that I've learned.
Yeah, no one wants to give money for nothing. Okay. Naomi?
Well, I think you made a really good point, Erica, saying, don't put your career in someone else's hands. I think you do have to advocate for yourself. Sometimes you might be successful, sometimes you might not be. You might be. I think at times I might have been naive, thinking, oh, your work will speak for itself, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, so I think there are unconscious biases, and certainly in engineering, there are so many more men. I mean, as a planner, I'd say there's really there's more parity. But even so, in fields where there is parity, there's still, there still are a lot of biases. So I think you do have to stick up for yourself, and try to find a mentor and somebody who's going to help you along the way.
Yeah. And are there any specific difficulties or any event in specific that you have to deal with, um, something that made you uncomfortable, or something like you mentioned that, Erica, in your company that was 80% male? Was there anything, any difficulty or any event just because you were a woman and in that company or in like this male dominated field that you
Yeah, yeah.
went through?
I would say that I really liked the company, and I think for the most part, I really actually loved a lot of the people at the company. I just think it was the team I was on and the manager I had, because I feel that he kind of had favorites. And like at the time, I would say the transportation planning team, which was really pretty much engineering, but we had like 5 males and like 3 females. And the only people that had any project management tasks or were promoted or, you know, had any kind of senior role within the team were all male. And then, you know, the women were kind of doing the supporting kind of grueling work, like we, you know, do the data reduction and QA QC and just kind of all of these things. And not to say that, you know, we all are responsible for kind of the connections and the relationships we have at work. So, I mean, I think one thing, even though I didn't necessarily have great chemistry with the manager, I could have tried to facilitate more of a relationship with him, even though I didn't particularly find, yeah, we just didn't have very compatible personalities. And so it was just, I think, especially when I think the second year I was there, and then there were promotions. And like I mentioned, there was a colleague of mine who had been at the company for 6 months, and he had less experience than me, had gotten promoted. And that really made me mad. Like because I just couldn't, there was no, I like couldn't understand. There were like, how could someone that hasn't even had the experience or be doing any extra work be promoted? But really, he was just really good at kind of advocating for himself. And like, he was always, you know, kind of talking to the managers and, you know, trying to get the work he wanted. He was very visible. He made himself very visible. And I think that that was a good lesson to learn. I mean, he did nothing wrong. I mean, he just knew how to play the game better. And I think that that's just something that, you know, everyone needs to understand, is that, you know, in order to kind of, if you want to kind of do the whole moving up the corporate ladder, you really have to kind of make yourself seen in front of other people. So, I mean, with that happening, I actually went to the executives and like the president of the company and said, okay, like, I don't really understand how the promotions were, but I better get promoted this next time, because that's just not okay. And, you know, I kind of said, what do I need to do in order to get promoted or to move up? And so I think that it's really, I mean, it is all about how you kind of position yourself in a company and, you know, just in general in the industry.
Okay, yeah, that's brave. I feel like we do tend, I don't know, I'm speaking for me as well, but we do tend to kind of like shy away and not, you know, put ourselves up there. And Naomi, during your years to get to the director, so have you gone through anything like, because you were a woman, any difficulty that you can think of?
Well, just things, you know, over the years that I've seen and just become more aware of. Although in general, I feel like women have made a lot of progress as more women are in leadership positions. I think they're respected more. I think people are more conscious of these kinds of issues, but not always. I've read studies and things that where surveys that have been done show that people actually prefer a man as a boss, or they see a man as an authority figure. They don't necessarily perceive a woman that way. And also, they also perceive men as needing to earn money. They look at men as providers and not necessarily women. So I think, that's those sentiments are certainly out there among a lot of people. And then, it's just how women are treated in a job. Are their opinions respected the way a man's opinion is? Does a man, have you ever been in a meeting where a man repeats what you say and suddenly everybody's looking at the man as the expert? I mean, see Erica nodding her head. And those things do happen. Are you getting credit for your work, or is somebody else getting the credit? So, again, you really can't take all of these things for granted. I think we're more aware of them. I think it's good to be aware of them, to find a way to try to call them out sometimes, because it is it's really disconcerting when things like that happen.
Yeah, for sure. And Najmeh, do you recall anything in specific or?
Yeah, I actually kind of like to combine what I heard from Erika and Naomi both, because Erika mentioned that it's like that her colleague was able to speak up, and Naomi mentioned that sometimes they look at men, their opinion, and they say exact same thing, but they look at him as an expert. So that happened to me a few times, and that you're just being ignored, and the energy that's being used to handle that ignorance for that guy being ignored, that guy is using it to speak up for himself, so we sometimes, I don't see it that often. Actually, that happened to me a few times. As I said, I think I've been fortunate, at least within my company, and those times that happened, that was actually with the clients outside our company. But you just need to really learn that over time, that these things could happen, but it really depends. I mean, I learned that it depends on me, on how much I let that control my attitude after that, and let that to either discourage me or just give me more encouragement. So just be prepared for that, and be prepared not to let those things discourage you. That's what I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I personally also experienced what you guys are saying. So if you are in the same level of some male counterpart and like coworker, and you are both being asked something, so they will look first to your male coworker expecting for an answer instead of you. That happens, and it's a little bit frustrating, but it's okay.
And that's something else I like to add. I mean, that doesn't really happen often, but it can go the other way too. Sometimes we emphasizing so much on this, having male and female, the same number of male and female in this role. I think it should be more. That's more insulting to me, that they said, okay, we need to have like certain amount of women and certain amount of men for this position. I rather to be judged based on my quality. And if there is a man that's more qualified than me, I'm totally fine with that. But I don't want this to be, that is insulting to me, that I get picked for a position based on my gender rather than my quality.
Yeah, for sure. And is there a key leadership lesson or any advice for young women entering the workforce? So our participants here today that you can think of. Well, let's start with Naomi.
Advice for young women? Well, I would say definitely pursue what you're interested in. As we've said earlier, try to learn as much as you can from people around you. Look at people, find a mentor, identify what people are good at. It's rare that you find somebody who's perfect, but really try to learn from the good examples that you see around you, and ask questions to other people, and don't be afraid to express your opinion. And I would also say to take advantage of professional development opportunities that are out there. I don't know if people are aware of the Women's Transportation Seminar Mentoring Program. I was actually a mentor in that program, but I know that it's a really valuable experience if you have an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I think being part of WTS is great. I'm also part of the WTS organization, and I feel like it helped me a lot, especially with networking. So it's something that I also think is very important. Erica, so do you have any tips, advice?
I would say, I would definitely echo what Naomi said. And also just really have the confidence to stand behind the work that you do. And, and also I think don't be afraid to call out bad behavior. Like if something doesn't feel right, or you feel that, just you're being overlooked for something, like just like feel comfortable addressing it. Because I think the more that we just kind of are complacent, or we don't, kind of address things that really should be said, then we just kind of end up not being where we should be, or putting up with things that we shouldn't be putting up with. So I think, just also learn to be resourceful, just be creative with, how you do work, how you learn, who you network with, just seek out people that have the job you want, or do the work that you want to do. And I think kind of getting outside of also just your immediate kind of circle or comfort zone. I think that's also good in terms of what we mentioned in terms of just networking and, you know, just, yeah, kind of seeing what else is out there. So.
Yeah, for sure. Najmeh?
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned that. It's one of the great lessons that I learned is to be a good observer and always try to be open to other people's opinion and learn from them, but also don't be afraid to add your own style and your own talents to that when you learn from experienced people. And as both Naomi and Erika mentioned, networking is great. We can't emphasize that enough. I remember my first boss told me, he didn't really mean that, but he said, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. But I mean, there's a lot about what you know, but there's a lot more about your connection and networking.
Yeah, networking is, I think, like a great opportunity to put your feet right in the beginning of the market. Yeah.
And you learn a lot by that.
And how do you think our male allies can help to increase the number of women in leadership positions? How do you think is the best way for them to like actually help and be allies? Let's start with Erica.
Well, I've been really fortunate with a lot of like male friends in the industry and colleagues, because I mean, I was able to get kind of my first job through someone I met at another job who put me in contact with this other company. So, I mean, there are definitely a lot of great men that are there to, you know, help you and advocate for you. I mean, I learned how to negotiate my salary from a white guy I'm really good friends with. Like basically, that's another lesson I think everyone should take on, male and female. Always negotiate your salary. Don't just kind of settle for the amount that they give you. Just negotiate anything, but definitely negotiate your salary. So yeah, I had a lot of great like male colleagues and friends that really helped me navigate kind of certain issues within a company, or, you know, kind of going to the next company or what I should be doing kind of career-wise. So I think, you know, I've been fortunate that way. But also I think just generally, you know, the women need to have a voice in kind of major decisions, and, you know, they need to be kind of on executive level and part of the hiring process. So I mean, just there needs to be balance with kind of all of the kind of big decisions that are kind of made within a company and within our industry. I mean, fortunately, in my current company, we used to have a female general manager, and now she's working for US DOT. So Mira Joshi. So yeah, I mean, they are definitely out there, and she wasn't a planner and engineer. She has a law background, but I mean, so there, you know, there's plenty of great women in high positions, and there are great men that are willing to help out women and advocate for them too. So.
Yeah, she's great. We had her for the transportation camp this year. Yeah, she's a great speaker. Najmeh?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, fortunately, I never had any bad experience with my male colleagues. They're always been super supportive, and I never felt like they're looking at me differently. I had those experiences with few clients when in my previous job, as I mentioned. But I guess, yeah, the more they look at men and women engineer as normal as possible. I mean, that's as unbiased as possible. You know, that's, I think, the best way, just looking at the ideas rather than which gender this idea is coming from. I think that's the key.
Naomi?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely being gender neutral, but also just, you know, giving our people giving women opportunities to develop leadership skills so that they can advance and move into the next position, and then they just need support in their job. You know, so I've had a variety of people, you know, men and women who have helped me along the way. You know, some less so than others, but, you know, definitely a lot who've helped me get to where I am.
Okay, nice. So now thinking about the COVID pandemic, did you notice personally any impact on the private or public sector? Naomi, why don't you?
Well, you know, I would say definitely, you know, in the transit world, a lot of the trends that we're seeing in transit we were seeing prior to the pandemic drops in ridership, and that was because of competition from transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, and low gas prices and widely available credit to own a car, and also the increase in e-commerce and people making fewer trips by transit to go shopping. But I think a really major change, and something that has for the first time being tested on a really wide scale, is telecommuting. So, we're really at a crossroads as far as what's going to happen with that and how it's going to affect transportation in the long run, and what the changes are going to be as far as transit, or whether other types of alternative travel are going to be needed, and what people's residential preferences are going to be, and how land use is going to develop, where businesses are going to locate. I think, as far as the greatest impact for transportation is where we're going with telecommuting, and there's been a lot of studies on it already. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, say, in the next year.
Yeah, for sure. So Najmeh and Erica, you actually are in the private sector. So looking for the private sector side, what impact do you notice?
A lot of reworking or updating our previous work. As I said, we've done a lot of traffic and revenue for toll agencies, or traffic projections, and now they want us to look at our model and say, okay, obviously our number is not any close to like 80%, 60%. We will see some recovery, but they want us to project based on the new normal. So this is our definition. Like, we have a new normal that the traffic is going to be less than normal before pre-COVID. And that's something very challenging. I mean, there's so many uncertainty involved. And as Naomi said, this teleworking, it's a huge impact, because some of this can be like permanent. And we just need to add those factors to all our traffic work. So this is something that we're learning, and we continue to learn, and transit ridership, and how this is all going to change over time, because we always want to be prepared for the future and see how traffic is going to grow and what we need to do for that. So it's a learning process, and we're doing our best.
Okay, and Erica?
Well, since all of my work was with Port Authority, that's public, and there's basically big cuts to the budget. So that was a big thing. The good thing with, I'd say, LaGuardia redevelopment is that they were able to kind of activate new roadways without as bad of traffic issues that we would have had there been normal traffic volumes. But yeah, I mean, travel is still really low. And we don't know when people are going to start flying again. And but we've been able to set up, they set up like COVID testing centers in like the garage in LaGuardia. We also have it at JFK at the Aqueduct kind of area. So they've adapted some of the kind of parts of the airport for COVID testing and such. But there's basically very low traveling and traffic volume. So I mean, that's good for redevelopment, but just for the agency, I mean, that's not great. So
yeah, and I've been reading, and people, like some of the researchers that I've read their work, were talking about autonomous vehicles and how they could be helpful in these situations. So for example, Uber that you have to take, you don't have to actually be in contact with a driver. So what are your thoughts on those emerging technologies, and like how they will change our field? So let's start with Najmeh.
Well, that's something that we still needed to learn before the COVID, and now that there is another feature on top of that. So all these autonomous vehicle and connected vehicle, we needed to be prepared for the infrastructure, how they're going to start working mixed with the normal vehicles as of now. I mean, there are so many infrastructure challenges and policy. I'm sure Naomi knows a lot more about that, but to just have them all, but definitely it shows some benefit. I don't know, like transit. I worked on so many transit projects, and now are we going to provide some more technology to make the transit more reliable again, and people will start using public transportation, or are people going to be more inclined to use these, micro transit, or there are so many uncertainties, but definitely impacting our work, and we need to think about how we can incorporate those. As I said, there's a second layer in that now.
And so let's go with Naomi. So what do you think about
Well,
that?
I think we're really a long ways off before we replace, say, a 40 or 60-foot bus with 40, 50, 60 people on it, with an autonomous vehicle that knows when to stop and where people get on, and they can't even ask a question of a driver. There's no driver. I know there's a lot of different levels of autonomy. So that ranging from like the lowest level, which is like a cruise control kind of thing, to where you can take a nap in the car and you just program it when you get in. But I think it's really critical to harness the technology and see, well, how can it actually help or complement transit systems? And I know there's a lot of theories out there. I know, and Erica might want to talk about this, Sam Schwartz's book, No One at the Wheel, and he has a whole theory about it and how it's going to affect the streetscape and how it'll affect pedestrian travel if you have an autonomous vehicle that's so sensitive that it stops just from a piece of garbage going in the street, and then what do you block off the streets to pedestrians? And so there's just a lot of different ways that it could all play out, and I think it's just key to keep all these things in mind so that we complement transit. We don't increase traffic with these things. There could be a lot of benefits. People could end up being able to drive well past their driving age, or have a car and have that personal mobility. So I think it's inevitable. It's a question of really using it the right way.
Yeah, for sure. And Erica?
Yeah, actually, I think Naomi brought up a lot of really good points there. Because the last thing I would want is more vehicles on a road. So obviously the traffic impacts is kind of another layer that we need to really think about, in addition to just the technology of having these autonomous vehicles. I think some trains already have kind of that happening, where there isn't someone necessarily driving the train in other parts of the world. So I feel that, in kind of certain instances, they could probably implement that in other areas aside from a car. So maybe like transit. I think transit would be a good place to start with that. But yeah, I think that it's still kind of a ways off in terms of, when this will actually be a reality. And then also, just how it will change, we'll see how that actually affects how people get around and where people put money. I mean, just like even where government puts money, like if government improves transit, then, people might be more inclined to take transit as opposed to getting a autonomous vehicle. And then also, although my dad is excited about the idea of not driving, and having a car. So, but there is a bit of responsibility just kind of letting a car do all the driving. Like you still have to know where you're going. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of where the technology goes with that.
Yeah, for sure. So now I'm gonna open up to questions from the audience. So I think, Siva, do you have any question from the chat?
Yeah. So our first question is, how do you start advocating for yourself? I think like both Erica and Najmeh, I think they talked about it. But like if you could point out like particular instances from which either you or like people in your company gave like examples of how they position themselves.
I guess I'll start with this. I just articulated that, I communicated that to people that were kind of above me, that kind of managed projects, that were like head of the company. And I kind of let them know specifically what I wanted out of my career and out of, the role I was doing, and that I was, intent on moving kind of upwards. So I think, the one thing is just, you don't get what you don't ask for. Like, that is a very important lesson that women need to learn, is that you can't just expect to do good work and that it will get recognized. So, I just think talking to people that can either advocate for you and that can like assist you with kind of where you want to go in your career and in your company is one way of advocating for yourself. And then I just think, especially if you get, kind of mid-year and yearly reviews, like kind of talking about, what you're doing and what you want to be doing, and just continuously having a conversation with people that, can help you get either the roles or the projects that you want to work on, just kind of trying to continue having those conversations and continue kind of getting in the faces of people that make those kinds of decisions. So yes, just kind of really making yourself known and within the company and within your teams.
Nice. Naomi?
I don't have too much to add. I would say, like Eric said, really advocate for yourself, document your accomplishments. So when you have that yearly review, you have a record of what you've undertaken. I guess also too, say if there's an opportunity to get involved in something new, if to take on a new project, to step up to something, not to shy away from it, and to get involved and to show that you can take on something else and go to a higher level.
Najmeh, if you have anything to add or not.
Yeah, similar. I mean, you're the one actually needs to go and speak and be very clear about what you want. They're not going to come and give it to you. And, they're helpful when you say, and they, actually that came at my year-end review when I said I want to do this type of work or that type of work. Our leader said that, okay, we're going to put you in the basketball court, but you're the one who's actually going to do the rebound. You're going to follow up after they give you the opportunity. They're not going to say, okay, did you do that? Or they're not going to follow up. I mean, they're being supportive, but you're the only person that's going to pursue what you really want. And you need to be very, very clear about that with your supervisor and boss and whoever on top of you.
Martin, you raised your hand.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for all your insight today. I guess my question is about the impacts from working from home. Even though it's true, like you mentioned, that it's more efficient going from meeting to meeting virtually than walking around the building and you don't have to commute. I've heard from many people that just ends up making you do more work and like spending more hours of a day at work, and sometimes the line with your personal home life and sitting down at a computer being doing work blurs out a little bit. Do you feel like you are responsible, for example, for work email for longer hours or to be on call? And if so, how have you managed working from home with having to be at home so much time because of the pandemic?
I can start if I think you have to set limits for yourself. Like, you're not necessarily going to get credit for always being the first one to respond, or feeling like you have to send an email at 10 o'clock at night and show you're still working then. In some ways, I'm not sure how that plays out though in the private sector, if you really are expected to, but I think there's kind of a balancing act. I was on a meeting and somebody said, oh, wait a minute, I have to get my banana bread out of the oven. And it was like, I guess the attitude is, well, as long as you're getting your work done, if you're making banana bread while you're working and then you get it out of the oven. Or somebody once said, I have to get my laundry now. But they couldn't leave it. They couldn't leave it in the dryer because they're in an apartment building, and they went and got it. So, I think as long as you're fulfilling the requirements of your job, but I think you really do have to think about, how to set limits for yourself, or else, yeah, you'll just become a slave to everything all the time.
Erica and Najmeh, anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree. Put that limit, and then as long as you do the job, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it adds more flexibility. I mean, you can sometimes start early if you want to get you want to do something in the evening, but as long as you do the work. And I work with at the private sector, but they do the same thing. I mean, that nobody wants unhappy people working long hours. They just want to be efficient. They just want people to be efficient. And I think blocking, sometimes they actually suggest to us to block a few hours, not few, like up to 2 hours to actually do your physical activity, or you want to spend time more with your kids. And it varies for people, but most of us do that, and that's been really helpful.
Great. Erica?
Yeah, I would echo that, just setting boundaries. But I think that's even regardless of whether or not you're in an office or not working in an office. But I think, fortunately with my company culture, and even with like the Port Authority, like they're great clients, I don't think they have unreasonable expectations in terms of always responding to things right away, or, like in the middle of the night or something like that. So I think as long as you get your tasks done and, you're doing the work, I think that's really the most important thing.
Siva, any more questions from the chat?
Yeah. One question is, do you think your male colleagues, especially those of your own age cohort, are more supportive than the older men you work with?
Tough one.
I can say, well, I think I've seen both examples at both ages. I really can say older. I've seen amazing supportive older men, and then very rude, inappropriate behavior from a young man. So I can't really say it's age related or not, at least based on my experience.
Yeah, I would say it's based generally on the personality, but maybe it would be more bias against women among older men than younger men. Older men, they might be in a traditional household where their wife might not work, or only went back to work after their kids were grown, and they have a kind of a different mindset about women in the workplace. So I would say overall it depends on personality, but maybe a little more bias against, more bias among older generation.
So yeah,
I would agree with that, because at my last company, it was an older man that was kind of the team lead, who kind of liked giving tasks to the other guys. So that's just kind of, it might have just been by coincidence, but I think collectively we always kind of felt that there was a bias towards the men in my team. So, and he was older, but I think, I've also had a lot of mansplaining from guys that are, millennials. So it's just sort of, it really does depend on the person. But yeah, so for the most part, yeah, it can go either way.
Yeah. So we actually ran out of time, and I would like to ask our participants, if you have, if you can, please turn on your camera so we can take a group photo. So if anyone can, like, if you want to turn on your camera, we don't want to, like, yeah. Okay. Have people coming. Yay. Okay, so I think let's give one more minute, maybe. Martin, do you want to take the screenshot, or?
Sure, I can take a screenshot. All right.
Okay, so
1 second. If everyone could smile at the same time. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Naomi, Erica, and
Thank you.
Najmeh for being here. We also would like to thank you, our audience, for being here and listening to what these wonderful women had to say. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.